Hey guys, I hope you are well. I was just going through the news on CNBC and I came across an announcement from Janet Yellen that almost made me fall out of my chair. And I know by now I should be at the point where nothing shocks me anymore. But this was so outrageous a statement that I was even taken back by it, and I just had to say, wow, this is just it's every single day you get to a point where you're saying it's gotten so ridiculous that it just can't get any crazier. And then the next day you wake up and you look at the news and you just say to yourself, yesterday I was wrong. Today it's so ridiculous, it can't get any crazier. And it's just this cycle. Every single day you wake up, and it just gets more and more bizarre and more insane. I'll show you what I'm talking about. Yellen says the government is operating like it's 2010. Calls for more aggressive spending. We just had a $5 trillion deficit. And yet, that's nowhere near enough spending. You see, this is the cue or the signal or kind of what is it? It's like the dog whistle, kind of, from Janet Yellen and from the central planners, basically telling you that in an implicit way that they're going to continue doing stimulus just like they continued doing quantitative easing. And it's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. This is why this is probably the main reason why I disagree with all of my buddies who are probably a lot smarter than I am on inflation long term, or well, let's just say over the next 3 years or so. I just don't see the system staying the same. I see them just whispering here and there, we need more spending, we need more spending, we need more spending. And sooner or later, that just becomes like the mainstream narrative that inflation is not what we should be concerned with. It's the lack of government spending we should be concerned with. So I'm sure most of you right now are saying, how is she even kind of coming to this absurd conclusion that the government is operating like it's 2010, when last year we had a $5 trillion deficit? That was just the deficit alone is way more than the government would have spent in 2010. Here's her rationale. And again, it gets so crazy and it's so ridiculous that they can't believe what they're saying. You know they can't. This is just the central planners planting the seeds because they need to boil the frog slowly. They can't just bam, do it all at once and say, here's a central bank digital currency. Or they can't just say, bam, here's all at once, we're going to do stimulus infinity. See, they can't do that because that's too much of a shock to the system. That's too much sticker shock for even the average Joe and Jane or your friend and family member, Fred. They have to just dole it out in bits and pieces. So you gradually get more and more acclimated to a point where $10 trillion deficit this year? Who cares? That's not really a big number anymore. Let's make it 20. That's really where this is going. Here are the key points. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen called on congressional leaders. And remember how I always say that they're pounding the table. We need more fiscal. We need more fiscal. We need more fiscal. Why is that? You guys should know this by now. Because the central planners understand that usually the commercial banking system is in charge of creating more dollars through additional lending. But right now, lending is going down. So the only way they can create more dollars is if the government spends it and the Fed monetizes it. So in my opinion, that's why they're continually pounding the table saying we need more fiscal, we need more fiscal, we need more government spending, because they know that right now that's the only way to get additional dollars into the system on net balance. And her this is even hard for me to read, this next one. Just, you gotta be kidding me. Her rationale is the inflation in inflation adjusted terms. Yellen said the budget hasn't really increased since 2010. Let's put this into perspective. Let's just say that your household budget in 2010 was $50,000 a year. Okay. And now in 2021, let's just say it's $75,000 a year. And let's just assume that compounded, that didn't go up with a, whatever, 3 or 4% rate of inflation. So Janet Yellen would say, well, my goodness gracious, you're implementing household austerity upon yourself. Why are you doing that? I mean, if you adjust for inflation, your budget today for your family's expenditures is lower than it was in 2010. Oh, you got to spend more money. Just taking that at face value, you see the complete absurdity, as though that spending money is somehow beneficial and that saving money, producing more than you consume, is somehow bad. But let's forget that for a moment. She's talking about the budget. The budget in no way, shape, or form reflects how much the government is actually spending, or else we wouldn't have a deficit. The government's budget in 2020 was, let's say, right around $3 trillion. Well, they spent $8 trillion. There was a $5 trillion delta. So what Janet Yellen is saying is, oh boy, we really need to spend more money, so we need to increase the budget, as if the budget was some sort of constraint to the government in the past. Using our example again, it's like saying that your budget went from 50 to 75, but yet you're spending $1 million a year. And Janet Yellen says, oh, my goodness, you got to up that $75,000 budget a little bit to keep pace with the rate of inflation. Completely ignoring the fact that although your budget is $75,000, you're spending $1 million. I mean, you just can't make this stuff up. She noted that several areas of her department remain significantly underfunded. Are you insane? There's several departments in the Treasury that are underfunded. So is that a spending problem, or is it a problem of allocating resources very poorly, which I would agree with Janet Yellen there. The government is a horrible allocator of capital. Agreed, for once. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen urged congressional leaders on Thursday to step up the spending. $8 trillion a year is by no means enough. You guys are you're behaving irrationally. You're spending an irrational low amount of money. That $8 trillion is laughably low. We're spending $8 trillion like it's 2010. Her remarks to a House panel that will have large sway over spending. Here you go. Here you go. Of course. Noting the aggressive programs the Treasury already implemented to carry the economy. Yeah. We need the government to carry the economy, as if the economy is somehow as if the government can somehow create more goods and services. Just absolutely absurd. Our team, listen to this. Our team has done valiant work implementing these programs with the resources at our disposal. Again, rephrasing, our team has done valiant work spending the taxpayers' money. We've done valiant work spending all these trillions of dollars that we have in the TGA. Oh my gosh, I didn't even realize this. Wow, listen to this. Her comments came a day before President Joe Biden releases his first budget, an expected $6 trillion spending plan to be financed by tax increases and heavy deficit spending. The point that it's deficit spending just goes to prove that the budget doesn't matter. $6 trillion. I mean, what was the budget? This is insanity. $6 trillion. We spent $8 trillion during the cerveza sickness. And if so his budget is $6 trillion. So if there's a $1.3 trillion deficit, that means annual government spending at $7.3 trillion. If that's what they're saying they're going to do, you know darn well that it's going to be at least 25% higher. So let's call it $9 trillion. Well, right now the economy is only $22 trillion. And this is just federal spending. So if you combine state and local, what he's talking about, and I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but basically what he's talking about is making sure that government spending as a percentage of GDP is north of 60% on an ongoing basis. In other words, the government spending is responsible of 60% plus of our economy's GDP. As you guys know from watching my videos, we define wealth as the production of goods and services. So you have to ask yourself the question, is this $9 trillion a year, or is government spending an ever-increasing percentage of GDP going to produce fewer goods and services or more goods and services? Rhetorical question. Obviously, it's going to produce less. And if it produces less, by definition, we are poorer regardless of how many trillions and trillions and trillions and trillions and trillions of fugazis are floating around the system. She noted that areas including domestic finance, economic policy, and tax policy have seen their budgets cut by up to 20%. Oh no. Oh wow. Yeah. Whew. As if a government agency or entity reducing their budget is horrific. Like, that's horrible. Oh my gosh. Like, that's a sign of failure. That, GDP is booming. We've got goods and services. We're increasing the plight of the poor and middle class. But if a federal government agency has to reduce their budget, oh my gosh, we got big problems. You see how they spin this stuff? Most people would say, hey, you know what? I cut my transportation budget by 20%. And what would you tell that person? Oh, you'd say, hey, wow, Steve, great job. Good job, man. How'd you do that? Tell me how you did it so maybe I can reduce my transportation budget by 20%. You see how the way the government works on a perverse incentive structure? And this is why they don't spend money well. This is why they destroy and distort the economy. They don't have a profit and loss. All they have is a spend more or spend less. And if they're spending less, it's bad. If they're spending more, it's good. I don't know why my computer keeps going down here. But that's really the gist of what's going on is the government and the central planners, they know darn well that they've got to continue to spend more and more and more money, if you want to call it that, more and more currency units, more dollars. And they have to do that to increase the amount of dollars in the system to produce the inflation they need to bail out your drunk, insolvent Uncle Sam. Because that's the only way that he is going to be able to manage his debt long term, is if he can pay back that debt with significantly devalued dollars. And if they don't get the inflation they need to the degree they need it, they understand they got big problems. And they also understand, in my opinion, that the commercial banking system, which they were relying on to produce those dollars, is just not going to produce enough dollars moving forward to bail out your drunk, insolvent Uncle Sam. So they're trying to take matters into their own hands. You see, I think that's really, if you read between the lines, that's what's going on here. The central planners and the government and the Fed are trying to take back control of the dollar. They're trying to take back control of the amount of dollars in the real economy chasing goods and services. That's what this is all about. All right. Let's go ahead and do some shout outs. We've got Ty Gorton, PMC Nunny Beeswax, the Cayman, Sora No Kentai, M9, Sustainable Lumber Company in the house, Becky B, Fernando Ribeiro, Pork Barrel Investing, Joy, Lou, Moody the Millennial, Ernest, Wittenschlager, Lee Anderson, Anti-Sun. Wow, I can't go there. Sorry, bud. El Chomino, Ganymede, Daniel Rainsbury, Nella, Christina Church, Raul Perez, Anjuyar, Seeker. All right, guys. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon. I'm going to get some lunch, and I'll see you on the next video.